Well, this is awkward. James Comr, the Republican congressman leading the baseless impeachment inquiry into President Biden, has spent most of 2023 in front of Fox News cameras rather than in the chamber trying to make a meaningful difference to the American people. And all throughout that time, he's cast aspersions and made allegations of corruption against Joe Biden involving these ominous shell companies that he can't tie Joe Biden directly to. But apparently it constitutes such a grave offense to national security and to ethics that Joe Biden should be impeached and removed from power. Except according to recent reporting, James Comr, an elected Republican congressman who wields considerable power, also has his own shell company, and the details are quite sus. I guess when it comes to Republican officials, every accusation is a confession. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. All right, folks, this is fun. We knew that James Comr was an idiot. We knew that he was a liar. To be an elected Republican official, you have to be one of two. Sometimes you get both. But he's also a third. When it comes to personal ethics, he's a profound hypocrite. So he hits the trifecta. I want to play some clips here, and we'll unpack it together.
The Biden family had 20 shell companies that the sole purpose, it appears, for those shell companies was to launder money through 6 different banks, and the banks called it money laundering in the suspicious activity reports. $24 million that the Bidens have taken in. They've run him through a series of LLCs that even the bank said serve no purposes. We call that a shell company. Shell company is a company that doesn't produce a good or service or has any assets or anything like that. And then they laundered the money down to the Biden family members.
Well, as it turns out, that might be your classic case of projection. Congressman James Comr, the guy you just saw there, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, who for months has accused Hunter Biden and other Biden family members of engaging in, quote, shady business, as he calls it, is now under increased scrutiny himself for having his own shell company. In new reporting, the Associated Press found that Comr's company, quote, functions in a similarly opaque way as the companies used by the Bidens.
That's great. That is hilarious. Now, also note in the clips that Jen Psaki provided for us so diligently, James Comr didn't say anything about Joe Biden. So even if he's able to prove that James Biden, President Biden's brother, or Hunter Biden, President Biden's son, were guilty of some sort of financial skullduggery or shenaniganry, that doesn't in any way implicate Joe Biden. But we actually have reporting that does implicate James Comr directly, not the Comr crime family, James Comr. So funny. And so I'm going to turn to additional commentary from Jessica Tarlov on the Fox Propaganda Network, the lone sane voice. And once this was reported, she had the exquisite moment of being able to rub it in the faces of her right-wing co-hosts. And again, it's just glorious.
The story that I think will be really interesting, and it's starting to get a little juicy, definitely by Jesse's standards, is James Comr and his shell company. So he's been going on for months about the fact that people who are innocent of these things don't have shell companies. But guess what? James Comr does. So he is one of the biggest landowners.
Does he have 20?
Actually,
There's a
well, by
difference
tomorrow
between
we
1
may
and
know.
20. Come on.
Well, just let me. If you are running,
I know you majored in political science, but there's a difference.
Does he have 150 suspicious wires?
The belittling that's coming just emboldens me because I know it's hurting you guys. So he has a shell company called Farm Team Properties that he shares with a campaign donor. It was opened in 2015. His wife is also a co-owner, and it is masking, of course, the fact that he owns more land than goes on his financial disclosure forms. If someone is trying to run an above-board impeachment inquiry and is running around all over television saying, innocent people don't do this thing that I'm actually doing myself, and maybe there's more, maybe this won't ever be enough for you, that's probably the case. But that's something AP report today. Everybody go and check it out.
Glorious stuff. I mean, you see how they heckle and taunt her. And I think some of them do it tongue in cheek because they know. They're like, yeah, we can't refute this. Yeah, this does look bad. Jesse Waters, of course, tries to move the goalpost. So does Greg Gutfeld. Well, that's just one. The Bidens, not Joe Biden, but James Biden, Hunter Biden, apparently have 20. Again, moving the goalposts in all sorts of ways. Now, before we take a look at that report from the Associated Press, we're not going to read the whole thing, but we're going to go through some of it. I just want to remind you of how James Comr himself reacts when called out on his hypocrisy. Because when, months ago, when Republicans were like, we got him now, we got Biden now, Joe Biden got money back from his brother that he apparently loaned to his brother, but we got him. There was some sort of financial transaction there. Then it was reported that James Comr similarly loaned his brother large sums of money. As a matter of fact, the same amount of money that was apparently loaned and then repaid between Joe Biden when he was not president in 2018 and his brother James. So it was basically exactly the same, except as a matter of fact, I think it was when James Comr was in office, making it by James Comr's standard much worse. But that aside, this was a couple of months ago, and he was called out for it during an oversight committee hearing by Democratic freshman Congressman Jared Moskowitz. And James Comr lost his temper. And so this is a brief reminder.
Never loaned my brother money. Don't have an LLC. But you and Goldman, who is Mr. Trust Fund, continue to try to
reclaiming my time.
No, I'm not going to give you your time back. We can stop the clock. You all continue to, you look like a Smurf here just going around and all this stuff. Now listen.
Mr. Chairman, I'm
going to tell you something.
Hold on. If we're not on time, we can
disinformation.
You have gone on TV and said the president did something illegal. You're doing stuff with your brother. The American people have the same questions. Why should they believe you? Why should they believe you? Why should they believe you? There's a different rule for the president. There's a different rule for you. Why should they believe what you're saying, Mr. Chairman? Why? You go on Fox News and say loans and deals are a way to evade taxes. We don't know that.
You go on Fox News. I love it.
What you're doing or not, we don't know. We have no idea. We're supposed to take your word for it. But when the president says something,
you've already been proven a liar, Mr. Moskowitz.
What's that?
You've already been proven a liar.
Who's proven me a liar? You?
Yes.
Your word means nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Go to my hometown.
Anyway, that's funny. I just love him losing his temper, of course, because he's so profoundly insecure. So anyway, let's take a look at the reporting itself. This is from the Associated Press. They broke the story, but because you see this damn banner, it takes up half the screen. So I have to go into read mode to get that banner to go away. So James Comr, a multimillionaire farmer, boasts of being one of the largest landowners near his rural Kentucky hometown. And he's meticulously documented nearly all of his land holdings on congressional financial disclosure documents. But there are 6 acres that he bought in 2015 and co-owns with a longtime campaign contributor that he has treated differently, transferring his ownership to Farm Team Properties, a shell company he co-owns with his wife. Interviews and records reviewed by the Associated Press provide new insights into the financial deal, which risks undercutting the force of some of Comr's central arguments in his impeachment inquiry into the president. For months, the chairman and his Republican colleagues have been pounding Biden, a Democrat, for how his relatives traded on their famous name to secure business deals. In particular, Comr has attacked some Biden family members, including Hunter, over their use of shell companies that appear designed to obscure millions of dollars in earnings they receive from shadowy middlemen and foreign interests. Such companies typically exist only on paper and are formed to hold an asset, like real estate. Their opaque structures are often designed to help hide ownership of property and other assets. The companies used by the Bidens are all already playing a central role. But as Comr works to deliver the transparency and accountability that the American people demand, that's a quote, through the GOP's investigation, his own finances and relationships have begun to draw notice too, including his ties to prominent local figures who have complicated pasts, not all that dissimilar to some of those caught up in his Biden probe. Comr declined to comment through a spokesperson, but has aggressively denied any wrongdoing in establishing a shell company. They talk about the exchange with Moskowitz. The AP found that Farm Team Properties functions in a similarly opaque way as the companies used by the Bidens, masking Comr's stake in the land he co-owns with the donor from being revealed on his financial disclosure forms. Those records describe Farm Team Properties as his wife's land management and real estate speculation company without providing further details. Okay, it's not clear why Comr decided to put all 6 acres in a shell company. After this story first published Thursday, Comr responded during an appearance on Fox News, stating that Farm Team Properties has 5 different assets and lots of revenue. He didn't reveal what those other assets may be. He also falsely claimed that the donor, Darren Cleary, wasn't a campaign contributor at the time the property was purchased, and yet Cleary and his family have donated to Comr's political campaigns since at least 2010, records show. And then the last thing I'll say is ethics experts say House rules require members of Congress to disclose all assets held by such companies that are worth more than $1,000. So there you have it. James Comr is an idiot. He is a liar, and he's a hypocrite of the highest order. And whatever credibility that people think he has, he simply doesn't. He is objectively much more guilty of the things that he's accusing Hunter and James Biden of, because there's more direct evidence that Comr is guilty of that. And Hunter and James Biden are famously not Joe Biden, who is the target of the impeachment inquiry, which just goes to show you. And I know this might offend some people, centrists or conservatives who may or may not be watching. Republican elected officials are just morally inferior to Democratic elected officials. There is no contest. This is proof of it. On his very worst day, Joe Biden is infinitely more ethical than James Comr on his very best day, and nobody can ever argue to the contrary. And this is further proof of it. So to those of you out there who are, having discussions about the impeachment with your MAGA uncle or your Republican cousin, be sure to bring this up and make sure, say, listen, if you really care about corruption, then you would agree that this should be investigated, right? Democrats should investigate this. Republicans, really. Comr's fellow Republicans should investigate this. This should be referred to the Ethics Committee. This seems to be at least substantive basis to investigate a potential violation of ethics rules in Congress. Maybe the Department of Justice should look into it. Certainly, if and when Democrats retake the House in 2024, they should be looking into James Comr's various ethical breaches. And I think Democrats should start to suggest that that's what's going to happen. These are hardball politics. Republicans play it well because they know they can't compete on record and they know they can't compete on the facts. So they appeal to systemic and institutional advantages and ruthlessness. And Democrats should probably start being ruthless too, especially when James Comr provides such a basis for it. Let me know what you think in the comments.